As far as how it works, back to that monomaniacal paperclip thing, another monomaniacal reproducer that we're all very intimately familiar with in 2021 is a virus. A virus. So when I was doing those fake papers, which, by the way, my proudest thing that I think I've ever achieved in my life after we did these 20 fake papers was that the New York Times put on the front cover, just below the fold, that canine sex and Hooters go to academia or something like that. Yeah, but canine sex and Hooters on the front page of the New York Times. I was like, there it is. I've achieved something. That's the culmination of my life's work up to 2018, was getting canine sex and Hooters on the cover of the New York Times, because that was the subject of two of the papers. Well, when we were doing the research for that, we read a paper that's, I kid you not, called Women's Studies as a Virus, in which they describe their own work. They say that the metaphor of the virus is the ideal pedagogy for women's studies, and by extension, any of these identity Marxist approaches, women's studies, gender studies, critical race theory, disability studies, fat studies, you name it. You have a critical theory of identity or a identity Marxist theory, and they all hold themselves up with their ideal metaphor being a virus. And what do they say? This is how they take over an institution such as your college, university. They say that the point of a women's studies class, after they compare themselves favorably to the function of HIV, Ebola, and SARS, also cancer, because cancer represents true transformative change, which is, by the way, a code word. Transformative means communism. It does. Democracy also means communism for communists, if you didn't know that, because if you and I aren't perfectly equal, our voices aren't perfectly equal, so our democracy isn't true. So you have to have communism to have democracy. So when you hear them on TV and say, this is going to ruin our democracy, I'm like, oh no. I know what that might mean, but I can't be sure if that's what it means. Oh no. So they hold themselves up after these comparisons. They hold themselves up ideally as a virus. And what they say the point is, say that they give the example of a biology class, a student. So you have a biology major and you make him take, or get him to take, or get her to take, they say male is better, women's studies classes. And you indoctrinate them. And then you send that biology major off to graduate school radicalized. And so the radical enters into a new department. It could be a committee instead of an academic department, and starts changing it from within. That is to turn the student into the viral agent that is going to go infect the cell of a new institution. It will then inject the critical DNA in, and we've already heard kind of examples of how this happens. It's a very polarizing thing. You operationalize the playing field by bringing these ideas in and making dispute about them. Eventually, you wait for a precipitating event where something happens. We all have to pay attention to it now. You watch how that polarizes, and then you promote to positions of power the people who become, in one of the words from Diversity Officer magazine, which exists, become fanatics. You promote those people to positions of power. You reorganize the social structure and policy of the institution or the department or whatever, and you start to purge dissidents by pointing out that they are the problem makers when in fact it's the ideology. And this has probably happened somewhere near you. An example I can actually give you was that I know of from a physics department at a major state university that I won't name. The woman was actually awarded tenure, and in her tenure vote, there were 17 professors who voted on her tenureship, which she won. 14 of them voted yay, 3 abstained. So she had a unanimous vote yes, with 3 abstentions, no no's. And she said that it turns out the 3 who abstained were all men. And she said that was incontrovertible proof of rampant sexism in the physics department. Then she denied herself the tenure she was granted, left the institution, cut off her own nose to spite her face, as my mama used to say. And what happened in her wake? Calamity. The entire physics department polarized. There was your precipitating event, which had been operationalized already. Everybody started to fight. Is this sexist? Is it not sexist? Is the department sexist? Next thing you know, they have diversity and equity hiring in the physics department, which is then going to lead to hiring experts in diversity, which means commissars in the ideology as we already discussed, and you're going to slowly, one person at a time, turn a committee, a department, entire university, a church into something it wasn't. And when they end up getting majority or enough policy to back them, then very much like the way you go bankrupt, according to Hemingway, very gradually, then all at once, the department will go from generally operating the way it's supposed to very slowly to all at once becoming a very radical diversity officer loaded entity, where now instead the question would become, well, if a physics department is sexist, what made it sexist? Must be the physics itself on some level is sexist. And now you're straight into the domain where you are pissing on bourgeois science, and you're about to have Chernobyl.